Well, I must let you know that Africa, across several countries on the continent, is raging. And of course, there is a silent war going on, not with guns, not with bombs, but with needles, pills, and of course, powders. Young people caught in the crosshairs of poverty, unemployment, and despair are increasingly turning to drugs to escape their realities. In Lesotho, a dangerous trend called Bluetoothing has emerged, while in Nigeria, neighborhoods are becoming battlegrounds where crystal meth and codeine tighten their grip on the youth. This growing crisis among African youth demands urgent attention as communities grapple with the devastating consequences. You're welcome to Fafana Africa. I am Lekon Onobanjo, and on the show today, we will be talking about the silent battle on the streets, youth drug abuse, and the struggle for survival. Let's get into it. Drug abuse is surging among African youth, driven by poverty, unemployment, and broken families. Desperate for escape, many turn to dangerous substances like codeine, tramadol, crystal meth, as the case may be, with some even sharing drug-laced blood to get high, risking addiction and diseases like HIV. This crisis is robbing young people of education, jobs, and their lives. And with few opportunities and little mental health support, drugs become a tempting refuge fueled by pop culture and easy access through illegal channels. As this continues to put the life of the African youth in peril, urgent action is needed to save this generation. Now, on News Central Television, of course, we have a team that put together a report on drug abuse. So let's start from there as we take a listen.
Two tablets a day and you'll be fine.
Studies have shown that an estimated 14.3 million are prone to drug abuse in Nigeria. In a country where many still struggle to speak openly about mental health, what lies ahead for its younger generation now battling drug addiction?
Speak English, no working. I don't wish you were. Oh, please just dry now. See the soap. I don't promise you. I found out, bro. You don't look alright now. What's wrong?
Nothing, bro. I've just been going through a lot lately. The pressure is crazy. My parents are fighting again. I can't take it anymore.
I can relate, man. I found a better way to deal with all these negative issues. I can hook you up with it if you don't mind. Just now. Trust me, you need this, bro. You need this shit.
So good, man. Thank you.
Bro, you need this. Try it. You thank me later. Don't waste time on this shit. Don't you want to get better? And this one will call straight to heaven.
And now joining us to discuss this, Josephine Etta, Head Advocacy and Sensitization, Stand Safe Society Against Drugs and Substance Abuse, joins me from Abuja to talk about this. Thank you so much, Josephine, for coming around. Well, Josephine, can you hear me? Good afternoon. Can you please unmute your device? And while we wait for Josephine, we have Gbenga Adeniji, also is the Head of Product and Strategic Partnerships at StreetSchool Education. He joins me from Lagos. Gbenga, it's nice to have you join us on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
All right. So I'm going to start with Gbenga before we cross over to Josephine. Now, for you, for any sane mind, the question will always be, why do drugs?
Yeah, so this topic deeply resonates with me, not just as someone that works at the intersection of education, technology, and youth empowerment, but also as a Nigerian who grew up, on the streets of Nigeria, Onike Yaba, where I was raised, and of course, in that, scenario, I was always reminded from my mom, I'll say it in Yoruba, Roti omo eniti wonshe, meaning remember the child of whom you are. And of course, that line has built in me a strong compass, and I believe we need more of that in the society today, not just rules and punishments, but a restoration of inner compasses. So I'd say that one of the biggest problems has been the family units, and it'll be glad whether we can start from that.
All right, let me take Josephine's response to this. For you, why do you think most especially young adults will go into drugs?
Okay. Okay, thank you so much for having me. Good afternoon. Young adults do drugs for different reasons, and majorly what we've come to realize in our line of work is that some of them have issues at home, from home, and then some of them is peer pressure issues amongst their colleagues and friends at school. So we have different reasons why they do drugs. Some of them, they're out of job. Some of them is poverty. And then some of them just want to try it and see how it feels like. And so when they start on drug abuse, they find out that they're unable to stop. We've had several cases like that of young adults who just wanted to try it out and then they ended up getting addicted. So the young adults do drugs basically for different reasons, but majorly because of family and peer pressure issues.
And now, Gbenga, if you look at of course, you did see the video that we played earlier about over 14 million, not just in Nigeria alone, over 14 million young adults are already abusing drugs, so to speak. So when we say it's family, it's because of peer pressure, it's because of poverty, is that enough that we see this menace rampant, most especially in the African society? Hello, Gbenga, can you hear me?
I didn't get your question.
Okay, so I said you did watch the video excerpt that we started with, and according to reports, over 14 million young adults in Nigeria alone are already into drug abuse, so to speak. And I'm asking, if we say it's just family issues, peer pressure because of poverty, are those reasons enough for the rampant menace of these social problem that we're seeing, most especially in the African community or continent?
Yes, I think that the reason why young people go to into drugs is actually a cry for help, right? It just goes to show how far young people are willing to go when they lack access to healthier outlets like affordable healthcare or simply someone to talk to within the family units and the areas where they live. You have to understand that these aren't just bad kids, right? These are brilliant minds that are, probably caught up in bad systems, right? So when we speak to young people, on the streets of Lagos, Agege, Mushin, Ajegunle, or even more polished environments, right, in the universities and tech hubs, we hear a lot of pain, right, and a greater hunger for belonging, right? So drugs, as many have seen, is sort of a shortcut to that numbness, to social acceptance, to escape from that, trouble that they had or that they once had. That's what I would say.
All right, so I'll come back to you, Gbenga. I'm also told that we have Grace Goyok, who is the Deputy Commander, Drug Demand Reduction Unit of the NDLEA in Plateau State Command, join us to discuss this. Thank you so much, Grace, for joining us on the show. Hello, Grace, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you
Good
so much.
afternoon.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to you. So, I mean, you are at the forefront of the on the fight against drug abuse, not only in Nigeria, but of course in Africa. In terms of your experience, what would you say the enabling factors are?
There are so many factors. There are so many factors, right? And one of the factors that I must say is poor parenting, right? We have so many parents that at the end of the day, they don't monitor what their words do, right? Now, I'll give you an example. I run a rehabilitation facility. They brought one person that at the end of the day, he was studying abroad. Then for the whole 4 years that he was there, the father didn't visit him once. He was unaware of the fact that the boy wasn't even in school. If he had monitored him, he was there, he was just binging on drugs. If they had monitored him properly, at the end of the day, the father would have stopped the fact that he was taking drugs to the dependent stage. And then there's also the availability of these drugs. It is so sad that we have a very porous country that they bring in all sorts. And the youths, they get it because they sell these drugs illicitly. So they get these drugs. It is this availability of these drugs that makes it very easy for them to abuse these drugs. Then we have the medical reasons, right? There are people that don't set out to abuse these drugs. But because of one health condition or the other, you see them, they get hooked to these drugs. Then at the end of the day, it becomes a problem to them. Like the sickle cell anemia patient, he doesn't set out to abuse these drugs. But at the end of the day, most of them are dependent on these drugs.
All right, thank you so much. Now, Josephine, let's dwell on what Grace just mentioned as regards the availability of these drugs. And of course, those who want to influence others to perpetuate the use beyond its recommendation or its dose. Does it look as though there's some sort of a deliberate plot to derail the future of the African youth, or maybe it's just a global challenge, so to speak?
Okay, drug abuse is actually a global challenge, and it's on the increase, as we can hear from various news that has been going around, especially this year. So I feel that more has to be done in curbing the menace of drug abuse, especially among youth, because many of them are coming into it unknowingly to them that it's going to be an addiction at the end of the day. So we are playing our part, and I feel more also needs to be done in this global challenge. It's actually a global challenge because when you go through the news in other countries, it's rampant. The increase in drug abuse is rampant, and more has to be done in curbing the challenge of drug abuse.
All right, now, Gbenga, is it always easy? Is it always an easy choice to make when one wants to venture into abusing drugs or using controlled or banned substances, whether you know or not?
You said, is it always an easy choice to make for what?
Yes, I said, is it always an easy choice to abuse a controlled substance?
I think that the world that we have today has become more open. It's a global village. So when you talk about street life today, it's not just physical, right? It's actually digital. You have TikTok, you have Instagram, and you have music, right? And so you find that many of the influences that young people see today, because the world is so connected, and of course technology is an enabler, it can also be have its bad parts in influencing young people to drugs. I think that if we can control what people see and what people hear, especially young people, and that goes back to the family unit again. If we can control those things, drug
Hello,
as well.
Gbenga. Okay. Go ahead, Gbenga.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard me. I was talking about the world being a global village and the advent of social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and even music, right? It has kept the world interconnected. And so you find that influences that we didn't find in our climes in Africa and in Nigeria, we often find them now because, everyone knows about everything that happens in every other place. And if we can control, the use of technology, even though it has its benefits, right, in our home and in our family units, I believe we'll be able to stop this menace called drug abuse.
It's quite interesting that you say control, Gbenga. Let me ask Grace that question. I mean, we can't shy away from the fact that it's prevalent in our schools, it's in our music and entertainment industry, it's in the movie industry, it's in politics, it's in sports. Is this something that we can control?
At the end of the day, the chairman, chief executive, he launched an initiative, WADA initiative, that's War Against Drug Abuse, right? And this initiative, right, it is coming out to tell the country, right, that NDLEA cannot do it alone. All of us must put hands together, right, to overcome this menace. And this WADA, right, it's basically sensitization, creating awareness in all, in fact, churches, schools, mosques, everywhere, communities, right? You create this awareness to let them know that NDLEA cannot do it alone. If we have to have control, all hands must be on deck for all us to fight this menace, right? By the time communities come out, right? You see, before NDLEA even comes in your community, what are you doing to control these drugs, right? If we come together, right, there will be some form of control. Because these drugs, in fact, there's no nook and cranny that you don't enter that you don't find these drugs, right? Even in the rural areas, they find it. There are some places that the terrains are so rough that for officers to even penetrate, it is a problem. So we need communities to come out together. Let us put hands together so that we will have control of how they get access to these drugs and abuse.
So I'll ask Josephine. I'll ask Josephine right now, because if we're talking about control, the question would always be how, because it's all around us. It's something we cannot hide away from. It's in our houses, it's in our neighborhoods, it's in our schools, our friends. Some of our friends do drugs. Some of us grew up with some certain kind of people within our neighborhood that are into the buying and the selling of drugs. Even some family members, they know about it, and some don't even talk about it. And some don't even do anything about it. So talking about the role of the community, do you think that people in the streets, in these communities, can do something? Because it seems as though that we have normalized it.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? What can communities?
Yeah, so I said, when you look at our neighborhoods, you discover that drug abuse is something that is common. Even in our houses, in our schools, some of our friends do it. Family members are into drugs, and you see that people that know about it don't see anything about it, and they don't even do anything about it. Doesn't it look as though it's been normalized, even while we talk about controlling it?
Okay, about controlling it. Okay, the drug menace is actually everywhere. If you notice from the news of recent, and even in communities, in schools, amongst family members, and I feel not so much is being said about it amongst people. What is majorly done is that people tend to hide it. So if it's found in a family, they're hiding it from other people in the community about knowing about it. So you find out that there's so much secrecy about the drug menace, especially when a family member is into it. So it's a major challenge that we need to curb. And much more needs to be done in schools in terms of sensitization, so that they don't even start it. Because when it's found amongst peers, it's even harder to curb, because you find out that it's going from one peer, from one young person to another young person, and it's going, the rate of drug abuse is actually going on the increase every day. So I believe that much more needs to be done in terms of sensitization, in terms of the community members and family members coming to terms with the fact that their family member is involved and they need help. So if people are made more aware of the fact that there's help for them, but there's help for the young people who are already addicted, I feel it will go a long way ensuring that this menace of drug abuse is brought to the barest minimum. Because we are doing a lot already, NDLEA is doing a lot already, but it's not just about catching the people now, it's about rehabilitating those that are already involved in drug addiction, in drug abuse, and making sure that they don't go back. Because many of these drug abusers, when some of them have been rehabilitated, they tend to go back to their old ways because of the fact that the community is not as welcoming to them as they should be. And these drug abusers tend to find a community amongst themselves, so they continue in the trend. But if more can be done to rehabilitate them and keep them away from drug abuse, I believe it will go a long way.
All right, so Gbenga, we can talk more about the end results of drug abuse and what needs to be done and all whatnot. But then we've not even talked about or talked enough about how these people end up or how it affects their lives. There should be some sort of education on those who go into drugs. What eventually happens to them? Do people even understand the adverse effects of having to abuse these controlled substances?
I mean, the impact on one's life, and not just the person's life alone, it's actually a stigma and stereotype, on their lives and on their family and on their name. I said something about the family unit earlier. In a culture that we are in Nigeria, one person's problem is not just their problem alone, it's the family's problem. And so I think that, the effect it has, you find some people, they don't even have their cognitive senses back again. And of course, the institutions also, are unable to, integrate these people back into the society as much as we can. But of course, for the positives, and the things that we need to do is to be able to create a safe space for these people, structured spaces for them to be able to speak about their stories. Families also need to rebuild discipline, rebuild routines. I know that, when I was growing up, we used to have these dinner table discussions. When you see something, you say something. All those things help integrate those who may have fallen into this menace, back into the society. And we should have, of course, special schools for this type of people so that they can reintegrate into the society, and they can make well for their lives. I think that's what I'll say on that.
All right, so let me ask Grace, for you, what are the broader implications of a society plagued by drug abusers?
You see, first off, right, we have the issue of stigmatization, right? That stigmatization, it is a very, very, it is affecting us so much that the drug menace is on the increase. Because of the stigmatization, it discourages them from coming out to seek for help, right? the time we realize that this is a health issue, right? It is not, they shouldn't view it as a criminal issue. Once you know it is a health problem and you encourage them to come out, it will reduce this malady. You see so many of them. Let me give you an example of community. There's this lady, right? She goes to the bunk where these boys abuse drugs. She will go there, she will not judge them, she will cook for them. Then at the end of the day, they confide in her and tell her that they need help, right? But the society, they are not accepting them. Anywhere they go, they emphasize them, they look at them like criminals. And they are going through a lot. They need someone that will show them love. Let's show love. Let us not judge them. Most of them, that's what they need. Once you encourage them to seek for help, I am telling you, it will go a long way. You will see her there, she gives them food, she doesn't discourage them from doing whatever because they have reached the dependent stage. She just goes there. When they say they need help, she'll be like, come, let me help you. And she has reformed so many of them. So that's what we need in communities. Let us not judge. Let us encourage them to come out to seek for help. It will make the communities better.
All right, let me come to Josephine. Most times when we talk about these social menace, we are always focusing on the slums or the ghetto areas of our communities. But then even in the posh or the luscious areas, people also do drugs there too. It's not only the poor kids. We have rich kids who also engage in substance abuse, cocaine, methamphetamine, crystal meth, Canadian loud, codeine, and all that. Do people like that have excuses? Do they also need help? Josephine. But Josephine, can you hear me? Okay, so I'm guessing Josephine is having issues with his audio, but I'm just going to throw the question.
I can't hear you.
Okay, so can you hear me now? Josephine, can you hear me now? We'll come back to Josephine pretty soon, but then I'll just throw the question to Gbenga to get his response to. I want to believe that you heard what I said anyway, about the fact that most times we're always concentrating on the slums and the ghetto areas, but then there are some places where we have the rich kids who also go into drugs. Do they also have excuses? Is it as a result of bad parenting? And do they also need help?
I mean, that's the stereotype we usually have when it comes to things like this. We feel like, the poor kids have a legitimate reason to do drugs. And then when you find, rich kids also doing drugs, then you don't have anything to say. I think that they need as much help as, the poor kids. Bad parenting doesn't exactly have to do with having money to take care of your kids. It's, being able to instill the right values in your kids, being able to instill discipline and that sense of belonging, just like I said in the beginning, roti or mobility worship. And so it's not good to have a stereotype, right? And it's good to be able to treat this as a solution that affects all young people, not just rich young kids or poor young kids. And so whatever help and whatever assistance and whatever guidance that rich kids need is the same assistance and guidance that poor kids need as well. And so I believe that we need to pay attention, to everyone, right? Everyone, like I said, has access to technology, has access to the internet, has access to drugs because it's on the street. And so it has to be, a holistic all-society approach that we need to give towards this.
So we can actually say that the society has failed these young demographic of the community, so to speak, of a country. But then, Grace, when we look at it from a contextual point of view, addicts now have actually developed several ways of getting hooked on banned or uncontrolled substances. They even call it Bluetoothing now, or hotspotting, where they draw blood from those who have actually abused those substances. Then they inject the blood into their own bloodstream just to get high. And I would ask the question, why are young people turning to such extreme methods to get high? Grace.
You see, they do that, right, because they want to the law enforcement agencies, right? They do it discreetly, right? That is why I still insist that we should encourage the fact that when you see them, you encourage them to seek for help, right? As long as they don't feel safe, they will do all sorts. And then you see at the end of the day, there's health hazard. There's nothing that jeopardizes health like drug use, especially when they're injecting, right? So most of this, right, we should encourage them to come out because it is on the increase. They are always hiding. Then you see so many in a community that I went, they were calling it tinapa. This Bluetooth thing you're talking about, one syringe, 10, you see 10 youths using one syringe. So you can imagine if one person has HIV, in this present world that we are, you can imagine 10 people using one syringe. And it is by the increase, right? We should encourage, it is not just, NDLEA cannot do it alone. Communities should come out. Then parents too, they should monitor them. They should monitor whatever it is, they should monitor their words. So that at the end of the day, if there's a problem, we nip it in the bud.
Well, that's actually a big one.
Let us monitor.
Yeah, that's actually a big one when you talk about parenting. Josephine, let me quickly come to you on this. Grace said something. She said parents should monitor their children. And we know the kind of world that we're in now. It's Gen Z. Everybody wants to be free. Everybody wants to do their thing. Everybody wants that freedom. How do you think a parent will be able to monitor, nurture, groom, and teach a child not to get into these dangerous health implicating vices when we have children who just want to do their thing?
Okay, we get to find out that children, when they learn the right thing from very young age, they're able to take it along with them. So in a situation where children want to try out different things, they can, from the parents' side, they can actually start grooming the children from when they're very young, in the sense that they can advise the children on how this drug abuse can affect their lives, with even videos we show for it. Because there are so many videos now going around on social media where they can use to even educate their children about the dangers of drug abuse. I know in our day, many parents are not always available. They are chasing the bag and all that. But, your child is actually very much important, more important than even the bag you're chasing. Because even when you get the bag, who will you now spend the money on? You're actually doing it for the children, but in the same way that you're trying to get a better life for them through financial stability, the parents also need to ensure that they're involved in the children's lives. It's not so difficult to be involved in a child's life. It's just to show care, such that when the child gets to trust that parent, the child will always want to open up to the parent and say, see, this is what I learned in school today, or this is what my peers told me about drugs. What do you think about it? So it's important that parents are very much involved in their children's life. It doesn't mean they have to be at home 24/7. They can actually balance the activities and also make time for their children. Because in our day today, we find out that many children, many young people go into drug abuse because parents are not so watchful, like my other panelists have said. Parents are not so watchful about how their children fare. They are not so concerned about what's going on in their lives. And it's not so good for the children because they tend to go the other way. They tend to follow their peers. And at the end of the day, they get addicted. And then they now have to come back to their families. And then that's when the parents realize that they were not there for the children. So I feel that parents should be there for their children. They should be able to relate to their children about these issues, especially when they see that child withdrawing more than often. But from some of these young people, one of the signs that shows that they are already engaging in drug abuse, one of the signs is that they get to withdraw to themselves. They don't want to interact with other members of the family. A child that was once joyful and playful begins to withdraw to himself, to his room, and he just wants to be there. And such signs, parents should watch out for such signs and ensure that their children, their words, their young people are better looked after and not just neglected because they are chasing the bag.
Well, I tell you that this is a battle on our streets. It's a problem in our homes. And of course, it's a struggle for survival and for the salvation of the African youth. But then we have come up with a couple of solutions. But then are those solutions viable? Well, we're going to find out more from our guests on Fafana Africa this afternoon. We go on a break. When we return, we'll delve more. Stay with us. Well, we're talking about drug abuse, most especially by youths in Africa. And of course, it's a big crisis that might just derail the future of our young minds. And that is why we are joined by a couple of guests, even as we try to find the pain, know the impact, and of course find solutions to them if we can actually attempt to save them right on Fafana Africa today. We'll have Josephine Etta, who is the head Advocacy and Sensitization at Stand Safe Society Against Drugs and Substance Abuse. And of course, she's been talking to us from Abuja. And we also have Gbenga Adeniji, who is the head of Product and Strategic Partnerships, StreetSchool Education. And of course, Grace Goyok, who is the Deputy Commander, Drug Demand Reduction Unit at the NDLEA in Plateau State. Thank you so much, gentlemen, and of course, the ladies for staying with us. Now, quickly, I touch on the issue around how it affects the African communities, Gbenga. Now, when you look at other continents, you discover that most of the youths are into several developmental programs, rather. They're into tech development, they're into creating stuffs, innovation, they're into creating businesses. But then, when you look at the African continent, it's quite different. And we are battling with drug abuse, societal menace, we're battling with prostitution, so many things happening on the African continent. And one will ask the question, what is the way out for Africa when we have the youth get involved in these, terrible situations and activities?
Yeah, I think that's an honest, take, and we need to be more honest. This crisis wasn't, built overnight. So that means that the solutions have to be layered and consistent and human, right? We're already seeing, some of those things that are being done by the government, like the 3MTT, for example, which is something that, I really love. Of course, many people will think of it as an economic program, but that's also a drug prevention program in disguise, because when you see a young person busy building apps, debugging code, and, has that sense of belonging, has that direction of purpose, they have less time, to be able to escape into drugs because their mind is engaged, right? But the question is, can we scale that fast enough? Can that get into the nooks and crannies of Nigeria, the streets and the towns and the villages, right? Another thing that I believe that is very important that we need is educational reform. Beyond just, going through secondary school and learning ABC and maths and science and technology, we ought to infuse, many of these mental awareness, programs, financial literacy, peer mentorship programs, drug awareness programs as well needs to be infused into our curriculum, so that we can have, a good awareness about all these things. Children can know the dangers of drug abuse and can avoid it early. It's good to take a proactive approach. We're looking at, things that have already happened, problems that is already on ground. But what about the next generation? Do we want to increase that metric? You said that at the beginning of the program. Do we want to increase that metric, or we want to systematically, make it go down? These are the things that help, and again, the family. I think that's the first line of defense, being able to have, fathers take their active role as role models, to their children, being able to have mothers, to be able to speak identity into their children, your Yoruba adage, sorry for using many Yoruba adages, it will say that, it's an entire community that raises a child, right? So you have aunties, uncles, older cousins who can serve, as early warning systems. You see something, you say something, those things help us. And then finally, it's the culture and musical influence as well, because music shapes culture and culture shapes our decisions, right? Right now, we have a lot of, not everyone, but we have a lot of songs that focus on drug abuse, focus on internet fraud, focus on prostitution, focus on, get rich quick schemes. That's a problem, because that repeated messaging also makes it a normalized behavior, right? So we need to amplify the right things, not censor others, but, to be able to provide a counter narrative, that's just as loud and as cool as all those songs that elevate and promote drug abuse. And I think when we do that, we can then begin to imagine a world where, it's not about street credibility or being a bad guy by using drugs, but about how many lives that you have impacted. So I think that the mission is possible.
All right. Now, Grace, earlier on you talked about the need for community engagement, for advocacy and all. But then we're in a society where the communities where we've seen substance abuse prevail do that brazenly in open display. For you, in terms of your experience, how easy has it been for you to go into these communities to engage with them, most especially for these communities that have actually seen it as a reality that they have embraced, they've normalized, and they feel, well, if it is their way of life, let us live it?
You see, in these communities, right, we're now trying to create awareness, because most of them in the community, they feel it is the NDLEA job to curb this menace. But at the end of the day, the community, in your community, you know the people that are selling. You know which house they come from. You see, in communities, there are men of integrity that these kids, no matter what they're doing, once they see these people, right, in fact, they stop whatever it is they're doing. Even if it is fire they are smoking, these people, they need to form a committee that will take care of this brazen act that they sell openly, right? Because there are some communities that it is very difficult for NDLEA to penetrate, in the sense that, you see, they enter these communities and they are attacked. You see these communities at the end of the day, there are some dealers in the community. They are the ones that are even taking care of the people in the community. So for you to penetrate, it is very difficult. But at the end of the day, now, if you're creating this committee, that is the Community War Against Drug Abuse Committee, that will entail men of integrity. When I say men of integrity, the traditional ruler will be part of them, spiritual leaders, security personnel within the community so that they take it up as a group and take a stance and say, we don't want this in our community. There are so many communities that have applied that, and you see it's working for them. It has reduced the rate at which they sell openly. There must be mobilization for it to be curbed. And I encourage communities to do that.
All right, so that's going to be a bit of a challenge, and I'll put that question to Josephine based on the figures that we've gotten. Now, the truth of the matter is that we might have community engagement efforts to actually sanitize or to mop up these uncontrolled drugs within the localities. But then there's this notion, Josephine, that people of influence within communities or in countries within the confines of power are even the ones that peddle these drugs and even supply, these kids with these drugs to keep them controlled. Now, one will ask the question, is the government even doing enough to control this supply chain where we have drugs being supplied and we have monies being provided to purchase these drugs for these kids to use?
Okay, you see, in this drug abuse menace that we are in, find out that, like you said, many high top government of some not many, some top government officials are actually also kind of involved, like you said, and it's a pain because many of these young people they can easily access these drugs. And it's one of the reasons why much more needs to be done in terms of sensitization and in terms of making sure that these payers, if I should use that word, these payers, these sponsors of drug abuse are brought to book. I believe if 1, 2, 3 of them are caught and brought to book, it will go a long way. We've not seen that yet, and it's actually a pain because you find out that they want these young people to still be under their control, like you said. And if they're under their control, they can do their dirty jobs, especially during periods of election and electoral violence increased at those periods. So it's important that more is done in the sense that these people that are sponsoring these drug abusers are brought to book. Maybe when we get to see such things, then we'll know that we're going a step forward in curbing the menace of drug abuse. But if these people keep sponsoring them, there's not so much that can be done in stopping these young children. But they have it easily available to them. And if it's easily available, then it's going to be harder to curb it. So I believe that much more needs to be done in bringing these sponsors of drug abuse, in these people that are pumping money into drug abuse, so that these young people can do their dirty jobs. It's not a good thing in our society that this is happening, but we can do more to stop it.
All right, Gbenga, let me also take your own, what's your own idea as regards what can be done, most especially to break the chain of addiction among African youths?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on what Josephine already said. Let's not forget, the supply chain, as we talk about it, is feeding on demand, right? And that demand is coming from, young people who feel unseen or heard, unsupported. So, just like in science, if you are able to, starve the demand, the fire dies where there's no oxygen, right? So that drug economy really weakens when fewer young people are interested in what it offers, right? So I think that we need to do more in that light, to be able to empower young people to see drugs as a menace, and in some of the things that I already mentioned as well, and in one of those things is also, a resurgence of religious organizations being able to partner with governments, what NDLEA is already doing, to be able to.
All right, I think we just had a glitch there with Gbenga, but then thank you so much for that response. So quickly, Grace, well, some youths have broken through from these toxic communities and have made a decent life and, of course, names for themselves. So how comforting can that be, and how can that also be leveraged to help others?
You see, for starters, right, once you create awareness, I'll give an example of one rehabilitation facility I'm working with. They are known as Jungle Ministries. These are the effort of individuals, an NGO, right?
Okay.
They encouraged drug-dependent persons, right? They came out and they're there. There's no money. The fact about this rehabilitation is that it is a very expensive venture. But what they did, they got these kids. They are not paying, they are not doing anything. They just stayed there, and then they have people in the community.
All right. Well, I think Grace too is frozen there. But then I just want to sincerely thank everyone for joining us to discuss this. Josephine Etta, Head Advocacy and Sensitization, Stand Safe Society Against Drugs and Substance Abuse. And of course, Gbenga Adeniji, Head of Product and Strategic Partnerships, StreetSchool Education. And of course, Grace Goyok, who is the Deputy Commander, Drug Demand Reduction Unit, NDLEA in Plateau State Command. Thank you so much for sharing your profound thoughts and ideas with us on Fafana Africa. Now, well, the late South African President Nelson Mandela once said that there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. So the war on youth drug abuse is about the systems that have failed to support, protect, and of course uplift these young people. And now it is time to end this menace and fight for their now and the future. Until next time, I am Lekon Onabanjo. Enjoy the rest of your day.